Nobody had ever asked about his past. Jonathan Walsh had been running a small travel agency in Springfield for 12 years. He was a modest, kind, helpful business owner. But that Tuesday, when his customer heard Jonathan's incredibly detailed knowledge about world events and his geopolitical analysis, she began to suspect. These insights were things an ordinary travel consultant couldn't possibly know. Welcome to Hidden Hero Stories. Before we begin this incredible intelligence story, tell me in the comments which city you're watching from today. And if you believe stories like these hidden heroes need to be heard, hit that subscribe button and help us keep these stories alive. In Springfield, Missouri, there was a small travel agency on Main Street. The Walsh Travel Agency sign had stood in the same place for 15 years. Inside worked Jonathan Walsh, 58 years old, gray-haired, with a kind smile. Jonathan was a beloved businessman in the neighborhood. He always gave his customers the best service, made perfect vacation plans. When asked about any destination, he could provide detailed information. But he never talked about himself. "John is a great travel consultant," one of his customers would say. "He knows everywhere, thinks of every detail." This was true. Jonathan did his job perfectly, but his customers never questioned where he got this information from. Jonathan was content with this situation. Silence was security for him. Jonathan's office was small but organized. On his walls were world maps, photos from famous cities, travel brochures. On his desk were always organized files, a clean workspace. But Jonathan's eyes were always careful and analytical when talking with customers, as if he was evaluating every conversation, recording every detail in his mind. That Tuesday morning, Jonathan began his normal daily routine. He opened his office, started his computer, checked the day's reservations. His first customer was Sarah Mitchell, a 45-year-old businesswoman. Sarah wanted travel planning for her company's European conference. "Hello, Mr. Walsh," said Sarah. "I want to organize business travel to Berlin, Paris, and Rome." Jonathan smiled. "Of course, Ms. Mitchell. When are you planning to travel?" "Next month. But there are important conferences. I want to be careful about security." Jonathan paused for a moment when he heard Sarah's security concern. Then he continued with his professional manner. "Which cities are you more concerned about?" "Berlin especially. Political tensions have increased recently." Jonathan nodded. "You're right about Berlin. There are still some sensitivities at the east-west crossing points, especially the Potsdamer Platz area." Sarah was surprised. "Potsdamer Platz? Isn't that a tourist area?" "Yes, but it was also the former intelligence center. During the Cold War, it was the heart of CIA and KGB operations. Even today, some old networks are active." Sarah's eyes widened. "How do you know this information?" Jonathan paused for a moment. He had given too much detail. "When you do travel consulting, you learn the history of cities," he said quickly. But Sarah wasn't convinced. The information Jonathan had given was much deeper than what an ordinary travel consultant could know. "What about Paris? Should there be security concerns there too?" Jonathan thought. "In Paris, I recommend the Marais district, but avoid Belleville. There, old Algerian connections are still strong. Some networks from the 1960s. Sarah stopped. "Mr. Walsh, have you lived in these cities?" "No," said Jonathan quickly. "Just things I've heard from my customers." But Sarah was suspicious. Jonathan's knowledge was too specific, too detailed. "What do you think about Rome?" "Rome is safe. But in the Trastevere area there are some old NATO safe houses. It looks touristic, but—" Jonathan stopped. He had said too much again. Suspicions were multiplying in Sarah's mind. Who was this man? "Mr. Walsh, where exactly did you learn this information?" Jonathan hesitated. "Ms. Mitchell, I'm just a travel consultant. I want to recommend the safest routes to you." "But this information, it's not in guidebooks." Jonathan's posture changed, more careful, more defensive. "Ms. Mitchell, what field is your business conference in?" "International trade." "Why do you ask?" "Because some conferences can attract attention." Sarah was surprised. "What do you mean?" "Nothing, just be careful." Sarah noticed the change in Jonathan's behavior. This man wasn't an ordinary travel consultant. "Mr. Walsh, what did you do before?" Jonathan looked at Sarah for a long time. Government work. Long ago. What kind of government work? Diplomatic affairs, but I'm retired. Sarah could see how evasive Jonathan's answers were. Which countries did you work in? Various places, Europe, Middle East, Asia? In so many places. Jonathan hesitated. Yes, it was a mobile assignment. Sarah couldn't satisfy her curiosity. Mr. Walsh, did you work for the CIA? Jonathan froze. He never expected that question. Why would you think that? Because your knowledge is very specific, and your behavior analytical. Jonathan remained silent for a long time. Then he took a deep breath. Ms. Mitchell, I don't want to talk about this subject. But is it true? Jonathan looked at Sarah carefully. This woman was very curious and smart. I used to serve in special assignments. Sarah's heart raced. CIA. I left the service. Now I'm just a travel consultant. But 20 years ago? Jonathan nodded. The past should stay in the past. Sarah was experiencing the excitement of discovering Jonathan's true identity. How many years did you work? Jonathan hesitated. 20 years. In which regions? Post-Cold War period, Eastern Europe, Middle East, Asia. Sarah's eyes sparkled. In covert operations? Jonathan was uncomfortable. Ms. Mitchell, these matters are classified, but you're retired now. Secrecy lasts a lifetime. Sarah saw Jonathan's serious attitude. I'm sorry. I got very curious. Jonathan softened. I understand, but that life is far behind. Why did you choose travel consulting? Jonathan smiled. Because I know the world, but now for peace, not for war. Sarah appreciated Jonathan's answer. Can we continue planning my trip? Of course, but please don't share what we discussed with anyone. I promise. Jonathan perfectly completed Sarah's travel plan. Safe hotels, reliable transfers, advice on avoiding risky areas. When Sarah left, Jonathan thought for a long time. After 12 years, for the first time, no one had come this close to the truth. The next day, Sarah came back. Mr. Walsh, I've been thinking since last night. Your experience is incredible. Ms. Mitchell... No, listen, I do security consulting. Your knowledge is invaluable. Jonathan was surprised. You're a security consultant? Yes, I didn't tell you the truth yesterday. I was testing you. Jonathan's eyebrows furrowed. Testing? Yes, and you're a real CIA officer. Jonathan looked carefully. Who are you? I was also formerly CIA in the 1990s. Analyst. Jonathan stopped. Which department? Soviet division, Moscow desk. Jonathan's eyes lit up. I also worked in Moscow. Really? 1985 to 1992, the final years of the Cold War. Sarah got excited. That period was incredible. The Berlin Wall, the collapse of the Soviets. I lived through it all. In the field. Sarah's breath stopped. In the field? You were an operations officer? Jonathan nodded. 20 years. 1980 முதல் 2010 வரை. This is incredible. Will you tell me about it? Jonathan hesitated. Memories he hadn't shared with anyone for 12 years. Where should I start? From the beginning. How did you get into the CIA? Jonathan leaned back in his chair. In 1980, I had graduated from Georgetown University. International Relations. The CIA hired me. Where was your first assignment? Training at Langley, then East Berlin. Sarah's eyes widened. You worked in East Berlin. 1982 to 1985. Right next to Checkpoint Charlie. What did you do? I approached Soviet diplomats. I was trying to recruit them. Sarah was fascinated. Were you successful? A few, but it was very dangerous. The KGB was everywhere. Jonathan spoke, remembering those days. In 1985, I was transferred to Moscow, my most difficult assignment. How did you work in Moscow? With diplomat identity, I pretended to work at the American consulate. But in reality, I was in contact with Soviet government officials. I was trying to get information from them. Sarah was captivated listening to Jonathan's story. What was your most dangerous moment? Jonathan's face darkened. In 1987, I was caught during an operation. You were caught. The KGB interrogated me for 3 days. If I hadn't had diplomatic identity, I could have died. Sarah's hair stood on end. How did you escape? The American consulate intervened. Diplomatic immunity. What happened then? I was removed from Moscow, but I returned in 1989. Why did you go back? Because the Berlin Wall was collapsing. The CIA wanted to know what the Soviets would do. Jonathan began describing those critical days. 1989 to 1991 were the most important years in history. The Soviet Empire was collapsing. Were you there? Yes, I was in contact with people in Gorbachev's team. Sarah couldn't believe it. With Gorbachev's team. Not directly with him, but with his close circle. I was getting information. What kind of information? Soviet collapse plans, which republics would declare independence, the status of nuclear weapons. Sarah understood how critical information Jonathan had access to. What happened after 1991? The Cold War ended, but my work continued. Where did you go? Middle East, after the Gulf War. I was assessing the situation in Iraq. Jonathan began describing the second half of his career. 1992 to 2000, I worked mostly in the Middle East. Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan. What were you doing in Afghanistan? I was monitoring the Taliban. After 1996, they began to strengthen. Sarah understood how prescient Jonathan had been. Were you also monitoring Al-Qaeda? Yes, I was tracking bin Laden since 1998. Sarah's breath stopped. Bin Laden? It started in Sudan, then he moved to Afghanistan. I followed him. Did you foresee 9/11? Jonathan's face wrinkled. I knew something was going to happen, but when, where, I didn't know. How did this affect you? I felt very bad. Maybe if I had been more careful. Sarah understood the burden on Jonathan. This wasn't your fault. Maybe, but after that event, I no longer had motivation. Is that why you retired? I retired in 2000, before September 11th, but that event showed I had made the right decision. Sarah was moved listening to Jonathan's story. Why travel consulting? Jonathan smiled. Because I really know the world. But now not for war. Didn't anyone suspect? Not for 12 years. You're the first person. Sarah felt proud. I won't share this secret with anyone. Thank you. Months passed. Sarah and Jonathan became friends. Sarah would get Jonathan's travel advice, and Jonathan would benefit from Sarah's security consulting. One day, Sarah made a suggestion. John, you should write your story. Why? Because it's history. You're the last witness of the Cold War. No, Sarah, too dangerous. But valuable, Jonathan thought. Maybe in my retirement years? Sarah noticed Jonathan's change. He was now more open, more relaxed. John, have you ever regretted it? What? Your CIA career, Jonathan thought. It's a complex question. I'm proud of serving my country, but the price was heavy. What price? I couldn't start a family. I couldn't have normal relationships. There was always secrecy. Sarah understood Jonathan's loneliness. Are you happy now? Yes, for the first time I'm living a normal life. And you love it? Very much. Peace is very valuable. Today, Jonathan Walsh still runs his travel agency in Springfield. He makes perfect vacation plans for his customers. But he's now a completely different man. Thanks to Sarah, he made peace with his past. He no longer feels he has to hide his CIA past, because he opened up to the right person at the right time. Jonathan's motto, explore the world for peace, not for war. And every day, he only organizes safe and beautiful trips for his customers. Because now the world is not a battlefield, but a beautiful place to explore. Jonathan Walsh worked in his country's Secret Service for 20 years. Now he serves people openly. Because true service, secret or open, always continues. As Hidden Hero Stories, we ask you, have you ever met someone like Jonathan? Someone with extraordinary experiences in their past but now doing ordinary work? Share their stories in the comments. because the ordinary people around us are sometimes witnesses to history's most critical moments. Thank you for watching. If this story touched you, subscribe and share, because real heroes sometimes hide in the most unexpected places. We'll see you in the next one. Until then, pay attention to the quiet people around you. They might be the secret writers of history.